When the cars lined up at the Sazuka race circuit earlier this year, it was all eyes on Max Verstappen as the Dutchman looked to claim a second world title. In the opening corner, the Dutchman pulled off a bold and daring move to keep the lead of the race as he demonstrated his skill in the rain. Many thought this was a sign of things to come, and that the major talking point would be Verstappen claiming his second world title in 53 laps' time. However, the drama and controversy came much earlier than Verstappen taking the checkered flag. Under torrential rain, the Grand Prix was red flagged on lap 2 when Ferrari driver Carlos Sainz lost control into the hairpin of the opening lap and aquaplaned into the barriers. A recovery vehicle was immediately dispatched, with several drivers passing the tractor at speed under double yellow flags on the second lap. Given the conditions, it was unsurprising this tractor was borderline invisible to the vehicles traveling past at speed. Carlos Sainz wasn't the only one struggling, as Pierre Gasly picked up a Rolex sign off of the road from the aforementioned crash. After a quick pit stop, Gasly came back on the track in last place, excluding DNFs. Pierre Gasly complied with safety car regulations that limited his speed as he caught up with the train of cars behind the safety car, but was still traveling at nearly 200 kilometers an hour when he came across the tractor crane that was attempting to recover Carlos Sainz's crashed Ferrari. The development and position of the recovery vehicle on the track was criticized after Gasly narrowly missed the vehicle due to poor visibility, and he angrily remonstrated that he could have killed himself if he had lost control and hit the vehicle.
Red flag. God, what the? Yeah, what is this tractor? What is this tractor on track? I will pass next to it, like. This is unacceptable. What has happened? Can't believe this.
Even at reduced speed behind the safety car and the waving of the red flag, Gasly attacked the development as disrespectful to the memory and family of his childhood friend, Jules Bianci, who suffered fatal injuries at the 2014 Japanese Grand Prix, the very same track they were racing on when he crashed into a recovery vehicle after aquaplaning off the circuit. Pierre Gasly was not alone in his anger. A lot of drivers spoke out against the FIA for the crane that entered the track for Carlos Sainz's stuck car. In addition to his furious team radio, Pierre Gasly elaborated on his comments, drawing on the previous experience Formula One has had with cranes on track. He stated, "We lost Jules already. We all lost an amazing guy, amazing driver, for the reasons that we know. How today can we see a crane not even in the gravel on the racetrack while we are still on the track? I don't understand that." Red Bull driver Sergio Perez shared his concern, calling the incident the lowest point we've seen in the sport in years. He added, "What's happened today just makes me so angry. I just hope that we never get to this situation ever again." Four-time world champion Sebastian Vettel often speaks out on safety issues in F1, and the Japanese Grand Prix was no different, as he commented, "Visibility is close to none when you are in the car with the spray, so we're lucky that nothing happened. But we need to understand why, because it just must not happen." Even when time and adrenaline had passed, drivers voiced their displeasure. Young McLaren star Lando Norris tweeted, "What the fuck? How's this happened? We lost a life in this situation years ago. We risk our lives, especially in conditions like this. We won a race, but this? Unacceptable." But how did the FIA deal with the situation? Did they see the severity of Gasly's close call? Despite the overwhelming anger towards the tractor on track, some pointed the finger towards Gasly. Former F1 driver Johnny Herbert said, "But the difference here with Gasly, you've got that yellow flag. Why is he in 5th gear? I really don't understand. That's where, to me, it's unacceptable." The FIA unsurprisingly looked to shift the blame as well. It was decided the Frenchman breached Article 57.2 of the sporting regulations, which state that cars should return slowly to the pit lane in event of a red flag. The stewards found Gasly reached speeds of up to 251 kilometers an hour to 155 miles per hour, but that in talks with him, he admitted that he was too fast. Supposedly taken into account was his shock. Or should that be disbelief at seeing the tractor on the racing line, yet still received a drive-through penalty and 2 points on his super license? This decision from the FIA seems to summarize why many people are so annoyed and why the FIA don't seem to understand why the tractor was such a problem. The dangers of having a crane on track was put best by reigning world champion Max Verstappen, who said, "Of course, I arrived there first and I saw the crane, and I have perfect visibility, but when you're behind, you always try to drive out of the spray. You go left or you go right. because you can't really see anything, and that is when things happen. You drive suddenly left and suddenly you can see a crane or whatever. That would be very dangerous at any speed. Ferrari driver Carlos Sainz, who had caused a safety car on lap 2, doubled down on Verstappen's annoyance and furthered the points of the drivers. What people don't understand is that even behind the safety car going 100–150 kilometers per hour, we don't see anything. So even if there's a crane on track and we are behind the safety car going 100 kilometers per hour, one driver could do a small mistake, a stupid mistake, go a bit offline, not remember that there's a tractor there, and crash into a tractor. So why even risk it? The lack of visibility and potential of aquaplaning make the presence of the tractor almost unforgivable. You only have to look back to the horrific events of Suzuka 8 years prior to the danger. The 20 drivers that line up on the grid are the most talented in the world, but even they can make mistakes that are potentially fatal when their surroundings are not controlled properly. Now, I've alluded to the similarities between Gasly's experience and that of Jules Bianci, but the severity of this incident cannot be understated. In 2014, on the 43rd lap of the Japanese Grand Prix, Bianchi lost control of his car and veered towards the runoff area on the outside of the Dunlop curve of the Sazuka circuit. He collided with the rear of a tractor crane, tending to the removal of Adrian Sutil's Sauber that had spun out of control and crashed in the same area a lap before. Spectators' video footage and photographs of the accident revealed that the left side of Bianchi's Marussia car was extensively damaged and the roll bar destroyed as it slid under the tractor crane. The impact was such that the tractor crane was partially jolted off the ground, causing Sutil's Sauber, which was suspended in air by the crane, to fall back to the ground. Bianchi was reported as being unconscious after not responding to either a team radio call or marshals. Bianchi was further transported by ambulance for 32 minutes under police escort. The destination was the nearest hospital, which was some 15 kilometers away from the Suzuka circuit. The FIA subsequently said that CT scans showed Bianchi suffered a severe head injury in the crash, and that he would be admitted to intensive care following surgery. Initial media reports in October 2014 claimed that the speed at the moment of loss of control was recorded at 222 kilometers an hour. The parallels between Bianchi's horrific incident and what Gasly experienced at the very same track are clear to see. Jules Bianchi was taken out of his artificial coma in November 2014 and began breathing unaided. However, by July 2015, Bianchi's father publicly conceded, becoming less optimistic as a consequence of no significant progress. Bianchi died on the 17th of July 2015, aged just 25, from injuries sustained at the time of his accident in Suzuka 9 months earlier. His death made him the first Formula One driver to be killed by injuries sustained during a Grand Prix since Ayrton Senna in 1994. The striking similarities between the fateful incident suffered by Bianchi and the near miss by Gasly this year led to the justified outrage from the drivers, paddock, and wider F1 community. This issue was made all the more personal as Bianchi's godson, Charles Leclerc, is one of the most recognizable drivers in Formula One. He has long stated that the sport should learn from Bianchi's death and not have similar issues in the future. And Bianchi's father wrote on Instagram that the race officials had no respect for either the life of the drivers or Bianchi's memory. The conclusions from the presence of the tractor crane at Suzuka in 2022 are the same as they were in 2014. It should never be there. The torrential conditions, lack of visibility, and ability to lose control of the car at any moment, as demonstrated by Carlos Sainz, makes a lethal combination. This is true even in theory. It shouldn't take a genius to spot the dangers of this, particularly with the constant dialogue surrounding driver safety. But when we also consider the events of the 2014 Japanese Grand Prix and the tragic loss of life that came with it, the appearance of the tractor at this year's race rightfully produced outroar amongst the drivers and beyond. Hopefully, the FIA and those in charge of the racetracks around the globe finally learn their lesson. And Pierre Gasly is the last driver who has to experience the shock and fear of narrowly avoiding a recovery vehicle traveling at a fatal speed. The signs are positive, as in the aftermath of the race and following an investigation, the FIA published its review into the Grand Prix, with the FIA's report recognizing that the deployment of the recovery could have been handled better. That is an understatement to say the least. The FIA is due to implement a warning system of recovery vehicles on track. The FIA stated that the VSC system would be improved so that the driver's speed limit could vary depending on where the car is in relation to the site of any on-track incident. In addition, the FIA said it would look into further improvements to the full wet weather tires and to circuit's drainage capabilities. All of these are positive steps, but the overriding point is that recovery vehicles and Formula One cars should not share a wet track.